Alrighty, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. We're recording, and I'm so happy to have Leslie Bennett's here today with me. We've been partnering out on the common room side with Leslie quite a bit, and she's just a wealth of knowledge around how to do go-to-market the right way. She just launched a new agency, which we can get into, and it's also very exciting. And working with, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's fast-growing companies in the $10 to $50 million range in scaling their go-to-market teams. So that should be right in the wheelhouse of a lot of people who are on the session here. So Leslie, it's so great to have you. I guess one thing to get started and kick things off is just to get to your origin story a little bit. And I'm guessing you didn't want to, or you weren't thinking of doing this when you were growing up and like, I want to be a CEO of an agency and coach go-to-market teams. But I'm curious like how you got to this route, and if you could give us like a little background on how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wanted to be like a marine biologist or something a lot more maybe fun than be the founder of a GTM agency, although I would argue that the work I do is extremely, extremely fun. But I was not actually called to sales or entrepreneurialism at all. I didn't have anybody in my family that was in sales. I grew up in a very blue collar family, so it just like that was not something that was on my radar. And even when I started the original company, which was Sales Team Builder, I started it just as a bit of a kind of side hustle, passion project, and never anticipated making it my full-time job. But sometimes, you know, the universe gets a little pushy and they're like, nope, this is where you're supposed to be. So it'll be 2 years soon. In a couple of weeks, it'll be 2 years since I launched as a full-time founder, supporting sales teams with their sales-led go-to-market motions. And like, I think, Kevin, it's about combining my passion for outbound done right and like really standing up for the fact that outbound sales is the surest revenue play out there for B2B companies. And just creating space for new creative ways to outbound that maybe aren't the ways that historically we've been taught to sell.
Yes.
And so that landed me in being like wholly unemployable as a sales leader, individual contributor, because I just needed to follow my own heart and find the clients that were on the same page as me to do that with.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good, that gets us into really quickly into territory that I'm dying to get into, which is, speaking of thinking outside the box and doing things a little bit differently. I've heard things out in the zeitgeist of things like people saying the predictable revenue playbook is dead and outbound sales is no longer effective. And I know it works. I know it works firsthand, but it certainly has changed a lot in the time since I started, which was in 2010 to now. And so things are vastly different. So I'm wondering if you could like walk us through a bit of an evolution of, you know, where things were and like what's changed and what you're seeing in the market now.
Yeah. So something really interesting about my background is that I grew up in sales in like business intelligence research consulting space, which was, it's not a recurring revenue space.
Yes.
So I bring I think as a result of that, a much different perspective to how I create processes and how I think about strategy, because I, in many roles, like owned the entire funnel for like, didn't really have marketing. So I was really owning like the top of funnel through to close. And then also was owning account management, which is usually what it's called in non-SaaS roles instead of CS. So I think I took a slightly more holistic view to how I was going to engage with my customers, knowing that there wasn't that like innate stickiness to what I was selling because it wasn't a subscription model.
Make it really count.
Yeah. Like every interaction had to count in a different way, because if I didn't get it right, it was like I wasn't an incumbent technology that would be difficult to replace. Like they didn't have to train their entire team to use what I was selling necessarily. And I also was going to have to manage that relationship after I sold it, which I think that just creates a slightly different sales mentality, because you really want to take the kind of under promise so you can over deliver technique. So just to give people kind of an idea of why my approach might be a bit different based on the fact that I was in the service space before I entered the SaaS space. People love to say things are dead, right?
I've been hearing email marketing's dead for like the last 5 years plus. Yeah.
Totally. Like infographics are dead and now they're back. Like cold calling is dead and it still works. The predictable revenue model is dead. Nothing's dead. Nothing's ever dead. Do we need to find ways to iterate and evolve? Like of course. But proclaiming something as like completely dead and irrelevant, I think is such like frustrating clickbait nonsense.
Hyperbole. Yeah.
Marketers
are good at that. Yeah.
And like, I think there's another really funny thing happening in the market right now. It's not new, but you're seeing it with new terminology to describe things that we've been doing forever. So now referral selling is called nearbound. Right?
Yes.
And like I think one that is maybe quite close to my heart is that folks are trying to label cold outbound as like warm calling. And then when they go on to describe what it is to do warm calling, they just describe how to do cold calling properly.
Yeah. It's like people are already doing these things and now are just saying, like, here's a new, better practice. But it's like, oh, we were always, it's like account-based marketing. I feel like that was always the way to do the right kind of sales and the right kind of marketing. And then it got branded into this thing. And it's like, oh, that's what we were doing. It just didn't have like nomenclature for it, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think like what the foundations of what works now has always worked, but we did get ourselves into a bit of a pickle with the like growth at all cost mindset, with these enormous SDR teams, with like the spam, the TAM approach, and more recently with folks using AI to scale crap, like the stuff that already wasn't working. And now they're doing it at scale and they're sending 3,000 emails and getting 3 meetings. And then they're saying that it worked.
Yeah, because they don't realize they're scorching the earth and having a terrible brand experience. But it's like, oh, I didn't pay any money for this. I didn't have to hire anyone. It was just AI hallucinating.
Yeah,
we got 3 meetings out of it.
Yes. So I think for organizations that are still taking that spam the TAM approach, who are using their AI to do more of the bad stuff at scale instead of use it to be more strategic or more intentional, for folks that aren't respecting their relationship with the prospect, sure, maybe outbound is dead for them because they're not doing it in a way that is repeatable.
Yeah. And before we get into maybe some newer things or signals or intent that can be used for the right kind of personalized, not even personalized. I like to think of it as more as like value additive sales, or value additive outbound. Before we get into that, I wonder if you can like touch on a little bit of the like core principles of like, what does it mean to do sales the right way? Like what are some tried and true things that like are never going away, just to like set the table of like, okay, once you have that baseline, then where do you go?
Yeah. Okay. Things that are never going away. And I see a question on spam the TAM, and I'm so sorry for using acronyms.
Spam
so
the TAM.
TAM is your total addressable market. So it's just like every single person who could ever potentially give you money. That's what your TAM is. And then in sales, we take our TAM and then we niche down to our ideal customer profile. And that's usually what you create your territory from? So thank you for that question and allowing me to clarify, Eugene.
Yeah.
Okay, so tried and true things that have always worked and will always work. I would say one of them is the basis of logic that I created my sales methodology on, which is earn the right. And brass tacks, it is just simply asking yourself the question, have I earned the right to make this ask of my prospect? So if that is asking them to read an email, what have I said in this email where I have delivered something relevant, something valuable to earn the right to ask them for their time and attention?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be carried through the entire sales process. It's a discovery call. What have I done to prepare for this discovery call so that I can really make sure that I am earning the right to the prospect's time on the call, and then earning the right to make the ask of them at the end of the call for that next step. So, like, first and foremost, I would just say that mindset that has always worked. And I think it's more important than ever because we are seeing a group of buyers that, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, have been inundated, depending on industry, by like a 40% uptick in outbound. Like, right? Like, they're overwhelmed. So much noise. They are feeling overwhelmed. They are feeling frazzled. And frankly, they can see through our bullshit. So there is, I think, like more than ever before, an onus on us as sellers to make sure that we are delivering that value at every step. So I would say that mindset piece and first and foremost. A couple of other things that are true and will remain true, have always been true. Taking a multi-channel approach is your absolute best bet to figuring out where to have conversations with your buyers, like to have conversations with them where they want to have conversations with you. And
by multi-channel, do you mean email, phone, Slack, like anywhere you can reach them, or what
totally. Or events, or direct mail, or even creating like nuances within a channel. So if you're doing LinkedIn, doing connect messages and doing in-mails and doing voice notes and doing video and maybe creating a piece of content and tagging them. If you are doing phone, don't just cold call, have a strategic approach to how you're leaving your voicemails, maybe incorporate text messages. So really creating your sequences in a way that allow you to give yourself the best possible chance of figuring out where your prospect wants to talk to you so that you can have that conversation with them.
Just because everyone's different, like people respond in different channels. Like I ignore pretty much all of my LinkedIn inbox because it's like a complete mess. So, but maybe if someone reaches me in a different channel, I'll respond because like there's less noise there. Is that kind of the hypothesis behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And something that I hear, and certainly I bet if there are any sales leaders on this call, it's something that they've heard before. Like a rep will be like, well, I never answer cold calls. So like cold calls don't work. And we so often center ourselves. We see it in email copy, like I'm your sales executive at blah, blah. We do our service. It's such a turnoff. And then we see that same sort of like seller-centric, self-centered mindset creep into how we create our sequences. And so based on how we want to communicate, we'll drop an entire channel like the phone, instead of acknowledging that just because it's not our preference doesn't mean that that's going to be reflected in the communication preferences of our prospects. And that cuts the opportunities to be more creative by not just doing calls, but also being strategic about voicemail, maybe testing text messages, and having a little bit more fun with adding pattern interrupts into your channels.
Cool. Well, was there anything else you wanted to add to the like, tried and true principles, or I'm happy to jump into like more of the topic here of buying signals?
I'll add one more because it's like a real tried and true, and it's make it as easy as possible for your buyers to interact with you. And I know we talk a lot about this in the SaaS space in terms of like removing friction. But even if you're not in SaaS, think about it in terms of how you can make it as easy as possible for your prospect to get the value that you're trying to deliver or to get the point that you're trying to make. Let me give you a really specific example. I know a lot of folks are working hard to create that feeling of reciprocity by making deposits before asks, deposits being like sharing a valuable insight, sharing a white paper, sharing a case study. That's great. Keep going. But often we'll stop at, here's a case study of your competitor. And then we're sending them like a 12-page document. That's a big ask for them to read that document or 48-page white paper. So another way to think about making it easier, removing that friction, is being super precise and direct about the value that you want them to get. Here's a case study. Here's one quote from the case study that I think is most relevant to you. This is why. P.S. If you want to read the full case study, here it is. So just anything we can do to make it easier on them will benefit us.
Yeah, it sounds like it comes back to the question of how do I earn the right to, which I really like the framing of that question for. It's like all around building empathy for like the person who you're trying to reach, and that like lowering the barrier to ask is one way to have empathy for the end user. Is like how like make it easy for them to like digest this super quickly, and then that'll make them more likely to connect with you.
Yeah.
So getting more onto signals, the topic of the day, topic of the session. I think that is a good way of framing, how do we earn the right to, and how do we earn the right to with the different tools and the different buying signals? Like how do sellers today or reps today get to earn the right by leveraging like what's available at their fingertips that maybe wasn't available before. So I wonder if you could talk about some of the signals that have worked or that you're seeing people tap into to then earn the right to message someone using that signal.
Yeah. Okay. So first, let me talk about two ways not to do it, because I think that's helpful context for like how to get it right. So the first one is around like disingenuous personalization.
Like the mascot type of stuff, or
totally.
Go ahead.
Hang on, Kevin. Yeah, absolutely. You breathe air, Kevin, buy my widget. And I know it's confusing. And if you are joining us today and you're an IC and your sales leader has told you that you need to personalize, and you're like, I am personalizing and it is taking up so much of my time and it is not like positively impacting my response rates, my positive response rates. Audit the way you're personalizing and see if there is continuity in the personalization token that you are using and the thing you say yes. Meaning, if your emails are like, hi, Leslie, I see you went to the University of Montana, go Grizz. Anyways, we sell. That's so disconnected. Or another really common example that I see in my inbox is, I see you're the founder at ABC company. You cannot just read my job title. Like, you can't read the news to me and expect me to care, particularly when the next sentence after that is like, so here's my widget, right? Yes. So I would say the first thing that I would challenge folks to do is, if you are personalizing, make sure that the personalization token that you are using is relevant, like has context with the rest of the message that you are going to send.
I see the same stuff with congrats on the new role. Here's my new widget.
Congrats on your series. Here's my widget.
Yeah. Can you share some examples of what you've seen done right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's stay on those examples, like the new role or the Series A, because those are still valuable triggers. But like, that's not enough for somebody to want to buy from you or for somebody to want to pay attention to you. So I'll give you an example of one of my favorite campaigns that I ran for many, many years that was highly successful. And it was about taking multiple layers of intent. So I ran it with chief procurement officers, but or maybe not intent so much as like multiple layers of triggers, a combination. But I would run it with chief procurement officers, and they had to be new in seat in the first like 30 days, new in seat as a chief procurement officer. And it only worked for organizations that were larger. So we're talking like Fortune 1000, so like 1.6 billion plus. And it only worked for individuals that had been at the organization for less than 5 years.
So this is defining your audience very clearly.
Yes, right. So they're not like lifers at the organization, but they do work in a large, complex organization, and they are brand new in seat. And so the new in seat is still my trigger. But instead of being like, hi, congrats on your new role, my widget is, it was like, I don't remember what the exact script was, but like the gist of it is, we work with hundreds of CPOs. A common refrain is that figuring out how to do your first 100-day roadshow right is overwhelming, because that's something that the C-suite does, and they're a service role, they're a support role, procurement is. So they need to go talk to all of the business partners to figure out how to best serve them. And then I would share an asset that was, here's what 100 Fortune 1000 CPOs have told us made the difference.
Yeah. I can imagine on that person's, when they receive that, they're like, oh, this person knows what's going on. They're kind of like reading my mind, because like I'm in seat and like this is a problem, and they are showing their expertise by highlighting that this is a common problem that other people have, and it's like top of mind for me.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it,
like, right? Like I'm still using the same trigger.
Yes.
Like right, first 30 days, new in seat CPO role. But instead of using it to be like, hey, congrats on the new role, what I sell is, what we do is, it's congrats on the new role. What it tells me is that you're probably experiencing this based on my expertise, based on social proof. Here's a gift. Like, here's something
that navigate that. Yeah.
Totally. Just that was like an incredible way for me. I would run it as a LinkedIn in-mail connect message double tap with email and phone. And it just gets crazy accept rates. LinkedIn, I was using Smart Links at the time, so I could tell in Sales Nav, so I could tell what my click-throughs and engagements were, like really, really high engagements, and often resulted in an unsolicited follow-up in that third or fourth month, when the state of overwhelm was reduced a bit, that they were ready to start seriously exploring vendor partners. And I had kept myself top of mind without annoying them.
Yeah. What you're describing is it sounds like a pretty like small sliver of signal and account match. Did you ever run into ceilings or problems where it's like, okay, this is a very high signal and a great trigger for us to operationalize, or for us to run some sort of playbook around, but like we need more volume? And what happens when you run out of signal? Curious if you've just trying to like knock down more and more surface area with buyer intended signals, or like what happens when people get stuck?
Yeah. Okay. So 2 thoughts on that. One is that it's always still valuable to build those types of evergreen sequences, because you're always going to have people that you can add to them, right? Like it's never going to be 100 people in that sequence at once, but you're always like people don't stay in roles forever. I mean, CPOs, like most C-suite roles, they're moving like every 22 to 24 months.
This is such a high value trigger that you need to have, you want it to be like streamlined. Whenever you see that, just put them into that sequence.
Yes, 100%. So even though it's not going to be the campaign that you have a list that you can dump 300 people in, because it is an evergreen campaign, meaning that you always will have new people to put into it, that trigger will continue to come up, the problem will continue to exist. It's really worth the time and effort. But the way I think about personalization at scale is a strategy that I called value-based segmentation.
Mm.
So we were talking earlier on Eugene's question, like your TAM, your total addressable market, to your ICP. And where I often see people get stuck is that they are trying to create copy that pertains to everybody in their ICP. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like HR executive. So you're talking to like director to C-suite, and it's in 4 industries, and it's across billions of dollars in revenue. And by trying to talk to everybody, it's the age-old adage that we are then talking to nobody, right? And I would also say, and push back on this as a marketing expert, Kevin, but I would also say that type of messaging is marketing's job. Like sales' job is to create messaging that does feel more one-to-one instead of one-to-many.
Yeah. I mean, I would say marketing's job is also to speak to the 1% or focus, like, because focus improves conversion so much that the same rule applies in marketing. If you try and be something for everyone, it becomes something for nothing for no one, which is really hard with horizontal products. And I mean, we have multiple audiences at Common Room, and that's a constant challenge that I'm facing. It's like, what do you put on our homepage when you have 4 different personas that get value out of your product? It's
right.
very challenging. Yeah. But it is marketing's job to figure that out. I agree.
Yeah.
And sales is like, let's go with the 1 person at hand, or the small group at hand here, and really strike a chord with them. Anyway.
Yeah, no. I think that's spot on, that like it is a challenge, because any organization is likely to have multiple ICP groups. And where I see sales messaging fail so often is that they try to create that one message for all 4 of those personas instead of creating messaging that's more specific, or they go all the way the other direction, where they're only trying to run like an ABM or a key account campaign for their entire territory. And neither of those strategies are going to get most folks to the revenue goals that they need. Like the full, quantity approach of just trying to send the same generic message to everybody isn't going to get you great results. But also that like hyper quality ABM approach, if you try to run that with your entire territory, there are so few organizations who can do that and have it be the right strategy for them, and have it be repeatable and allow them to hit their revenue goals. The middle is that value-based segmentation idea.
Can you speak a little bit more about that? Like, how do you put that value-based framework into practice?
Yeah.
Or maybe some examples of like what works?
Okay. So TAM, ICP, and now we're going deeper to get to value-based segmentation. The simplest way to think about it is, how can I build in enough additional layers of criteria to my ICP that I create a smaller segment that I am extraordinarily confident have the same priorities, same challenges. So it might be a list of 72 at the end, a list of 31, right? Like this is
These are people, not accounts.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a small end is what you're saying.
Yeah, it would be contacts, because like one of the most important criteria, and everybody has seen this, and probably everybody has sent this email. I know I have at one point in my career, like HR executives like you, finance executives, and immediately it's so clear that you're not speaking to that person. So like just one of the easiest pivots people can make is being super specific about the title. Like you can use the same template over and over again and change the title, and then maybe one sentence in there to make it feel like you are speaking to a CHRO versus a director of learning. Because what those folks care about on a day-to-day basis is dramatically different. So even though both might be part of your ICP, both might be worth working with. And even if they're in the same organization, right? Like, so same revenue band, same industry, just the title level is going to mean that relevance is different to each of them. So
Mhm.
To create value-based segmentation, you're going to want to build in those layers. So it's not HR executives, it is only the VP of learning development. And it's not all 4 of the industries you target. It's just this one specific industry. And maybe it's not even just CPG. Maybe it is just, it's food and beverage. Like maybe even go a sub tier in the industry. And then it's not, we serve organizations that have at least 1,000 employees, and every organization with over 1,000 employees, it's 1 to 5,000 employees, because that what's happening in an organization of 5,000 employees is a lot different than what's happening in an organization of 100,000 employees. So it's creating enough layers that you have a segment, that you have a smaller, highly segmented list that you can create one set of copy for and have a high degree of confidence that it will be highly relevant, highly valuable to everybody on that list. So it's a smaller list, but it still allows you to create some repeatability and scalability.
Yeah. And the idea, or the thesis behind getting that granular, is that it's doing more with less. Like it'll be much more effective, and it actually get you better results by narrowing so far. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, bang on. Like at the end of the day, sales is a numbers game. This is a hill I will die on. Like I don't care what people say. Like you still have to reach out to enough people, even if you are exceptional at using intent data and triggers. You still have to reach out to enough of the right people at the right time who are interested and able to use their social capital to buy, and then ultimately decide to buy from you.
Yeah. And whose job is it to surface those signals? Is it the seller, like going out and just looking for them? To me, it's like marketing's job is to pull in all these signals from different places and then package them up nicely into these plays for the sales team. I don't know if that is the case everywhere. So, what are the expectations there in terms of like who owns what to surface to what team?
Yeah, that would be the dream. I would be curious if anyone would drop a comment and tell us if their marketing team is actually supporting them in that way. I think that that's the dream. I think that's aspirational. I don't think that is the reality for many.
We got a hell no in there.
Yeah, exactly, Furman. Exactly. I think we're headed that direction, Kevin, because I think more organizations are starting to understand the importance of strategies like value-based segmentation. And I think more organizations are starting to understand that like investing in access to that trigger and intent data as part of their tech stack is essential for them to get in front of the right people at the right time, et cetera. But what I would say to any individual contributors who are listening right now is that if this is not coming from marketing, if this is not coming from sales leadership, you better figure out how to do it yourself.
And what's the urgency around that? It's just like that gives you such a big leverage and big advantage, or why?
For sure. Don't we all want to like work smarter instead of just working harder?
Yeah,
right.
I think that's the promise we're trying to deliver, right? Is like,
yeah,
all of this context helps you increase empathy and like reach out with a compelling reason that like adds value to the conversation and shows your expertise. So, I mean,
yes.
I think there's a lot of fancy things that people can do, but like if it doesn't actually like get to the stuff we were talking about earlier, like does this strike a pain point? Am I earning the right to talk to this person? Then it's all for naught, right?
It is. And you know what's really great when it does come together is that it makes the job of the seller so much more fun. Right? Like everybody can agree that, right? Like a day where you open up your email and have 3 positive replies, that feels great. Like when you are dialed in on your relevant reason for the call, for your call opener, and everybody that you reach on the phone that day agrees to a meeting, like that feels great. That makes selling so much more fun and so much rewarding. And it also is a better experience for our prospects, for our buyers, for our customers. So it's a win-win-win-win.
Yeah, I would even say it's another win on the leadership side of things, where you're like, okay, I'm just trying to crack how we do this go-to-market outbound motion. We have all these experiments that we're running. some finally hit and you're like, oh, this is incredible. We're getting like outsized, like order of magnitude better response rates. And then
Yeah.
as a leadership team, we're like, okay, how can we scale that? How can we make it better? And it just like makes the whole channel viable. And that's, at least on the growth side of things, that's what we're looking for all the time, is like, what's a predictable, scalable way to grow this business? And like, what channel can we just continue to double down on because it's effective? So yeah, it goes across the board. I love that framing of just like, it's a win for everyone. So very cool. I'm trying to think of, we're totally derailing off of my question outline and agenda, but I love it when that happens. And I'm trying to think of like, what's the last question to ask you before we turn it over to the audience.
I'm nothing if not a guest that will just take us down rabbit holes.
I love that. I love that. The same way. Is there anything? Okay, so I like the chicken and egg question. I think it's actually helpful. Like, okay, one thing we've heard or seen is that, like, there's tons of signals and tons of like a fire hose of data coming at sellers and reps. And how do you extract the high fit accounts from that? Should they just start with, here's the accounts in my territory and then listen for signals there? Or should you take in all the signals and be like, okay, of all these signals, these are the accounts that look like they're good accounts for my business, and like start with that direction first? Is there a heuristic or a way to balance that?
Why do we have to choose?
I don't know. Maybe that's a good, it's not an either or, it's a and.
Yeah, I would say, like, in the philosophy of always be testing, A/B testing, if I was standing up a business right now, I would not want to choose one or the other. Or like, where folks often come to me, they like are realizing, oh shoot, the way we were outbounding or our reliance on inbound leads doesn't work anymore. We need to figure out something else. Like, I wouldn't say go one direction or another. I would say let's test both and see where we get better results and better information and have more fun. But I think, go ahead.
Oh, it's another area, I think, where the ideal scenario is for an operations or marketing operations or revenue operations to step in, where you're not putting so much onus on the sales reps who should arguably be just focused on selling to the right accounts.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, we're seeing all these signals from accounts on the marketing side of things. We've defined our ICP, our target account list, but then we have this room for like 20% extra of like, when we get signals from these accounts, we know that we're going to put them into your territory. And then like that is going to be vetted by some sort of TAM analysis or target account analysis. And like when we see that activity from the right kind of accounts, then put them into their book of business. But I know that's a lot easier said than done, but I feel like that's the ideal mature state to get to, is like you're constantly refreshing accounts because you're intaking what's happening in the market.
Agreed. That's definitely an ideal state. Maybe for folks that just heard you say that ideal state and thought, I'm not there. A couple of other ideas just to get the conversations going, like to figure out what good intent or good triggers even look like. I would, if you have a CS or account management team, talk to them. Like, right? Why? Yes. Like, when you onboarded this client, why did they tell you that they bought, or why are they renewing? I think CS is just a wealth of information that is not tapped as often as they should be by marketing and sales to get a better understanding of what's truly compelling our customers to buy from us the first time and then renew. Maybe if you're earlier and you don't have that wealth of customer knowledge to delve into, just reach out to strangers on the internet. Like, quite literally, I was employee number one at a startup, like created the MVP, created the entire like very successful GTM. And I figured out how to build the product and price it by reaching out to total strangers on LinkedIn and asking them questions. Not, hey, can I have a quick chat to pick your brain about synergies? None of that nonsense, folks. But like, I really need an answer to this one question. I would find your guidance extremely valuable. Like that again, like making it really easy for them to answer me. People loved to be helpful. They were so helpful. And it was a great starting point when I had nothing, like when I was literally starting from scratch. So tap in, like, don't feel like you have to have all the answers yourself right now. If you're maybe not as close to that ideal maturity that Kevin outlined, like just start having the dialogue. And I think things will maybe mature a little bit more organically.
Yeah, I feel like we also kind of skipped over I always get the question of what signals are working, and it's one of those answers that are like, well, it depends, because it really depends on your business. Like the way I like to think about it is like, what is a trigger that puts someone in market? And so I think what you touched on, which reminded me of that, is if you talk with your CS team or you talk with your customers, they'll tell you what brought them into market. And if you get enough pattern recognition there, then that'll inform what signals you should definitely be looking for. Maybe the signal that you shared earlier, if someone's starting and they have all this criteria, starting a new job, they have all this criteria and they're at this company size, that's like the goal that you're looking for in these customer calls. But is that a good way of thinking about how to figure out what signals and triggers you should be looking for or using, or is there more to it than that?
No, I think that's it. Because I mean, there's the obvious ones, right? Like previous customer went to new role. Like there's these really obvious triggers. And I think too often folks just stop. And they aren't asking those types of really smart questions that will allow them to be much more targeted in their approach, to find the people that are like most likely to buy and buy now and buy without asking for a huge discount, and then ultimately become those logos that renew and do case studies for you and give referrals. So those are the types of questions that I would want to ask my CS team to help uncover who would not just be the best customer now, but who would be the best customer in 6, 12, 18 months too.
Yeah. And one other thing to add on to that is just when you do find that information out, that like perfect thing that is a signal that puts someone in market, oftentimes people get discouraged because they're like, oh, there's not a product, or there's not like an easy way for me to find this signal out. And so I think I really encourage people to try and do things that don't scale first, and just try and make that whole mechanism or go-to-market motion work. And then you can get creative with the scale, and it's not always a product, but you'll figure it out over time. You'll get the right resources over time if you can prove that it's effective. So start small and do things that don't scale when you're getting into this kind of new signal world, and then you can add on Common Room or some other product when the timing's right, or when you've proven out that it works. So I think that is something to keep in mind. It's a hard thing to do, and if you put in the effort, that's when you get the reward.
It's really important. Like if it is not repeatable, it is not scalable. And folks jump immediately to scaling without doing the very important work of figuring out what good looks like, and then making sure that they can get to good repeatably.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to the audience. We have a few questions here that I think I can highlight on the stage, but if anyone wants to add anything in the chat or the Q&A, I think we can highlight both of those questions for Leslie here. So let me pull this one up. I think it was from, I don't know if you can see that, Leslie, but it's
I can.
Okay,
Amy.
Great. Yes.
Of an asset you shared with a prospect. Okay, so really easy ones might be things that are already being created by the marketing team. So that could be like case studies, white papers, reports. Maybe you don't have a marketing team that are creating those sorts of assets. A couple other ideas. I'm running a campaign right now where I created my own infographic. I just did it in Canva. It took like a few minutes. Super simple. Actually, I posted it. It went up. I posted on LinkedIn this morning if anybody wants to take a look. And that's a way to, don't judge my Canva skills, but that's a way to share insights. And I think what sellers often forget is how many prospects we talk to. So even if you don't have a like wealth of information or all these marketing data or data points to share. Think about the insights or like the curated learnings that you can share. So it can be something anonymized, like, okay, Amy, I was talking to another CPO of a telecom last week. What they said was X. How do you feel about that? Like, even though it's not a customer insight, a marketing insight, it's still something valuable that you're sharing their peers are talking about. Or like curated insights, meaning, you talk to 15 directors of learning last week, and the majority of them told you that a top priority was Y. That's still a valuable insight to share. So just anything that would be relevant and valuable to them on a scale of anonymized insight to full white paper where you pull out the piece of it that is most pertinent to them.
I'm going to see if I can bring this full circle and say, I could take this recording, clip the, earn the right to, which I think is a great nugget, and then share that out with for our SDR team to use and leverage as like a quick win of just like, there's all these resources and assets created all the time. And if you can, think about like, what are the nuggets that are helpful, that's a great thing to share and earn you the right to have a conversation. So
yeah, I would share one more thing. This is one of my top performing subject lines ever, and it is publication : topic. So that might look like WSJ for Wall Street Journal, like Wall Street Journal : supplements, Reuters : resilience. So it has to be a really well-known publication for the subject line to pop. But you just share somebody else's work. So it doesn't have to be something from your organization. If somebody else is talking about the thing that is central to your expertise or the problem you solve, you can share those assets as well. And that's still a nice way to like create deposits and create reciprocity.
Great. I think that's enough value for the entire session today. Just that one little tip on the subject line. I'm going to definitely steal that. Okay, well, our audience is a little bit shy, which is okay. We did get some good feedback from Amy here. That's helpful. I think just to tie things off here, Leslie, can you share some plugs or where people can reach you? What's the best way to get connected? I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my primary channel. And also I am hosting a live masterclass for account executives in Chicago in April. So if anybody wants to come over to Chicago and join me and the Jen Allen at that live AE, I know she's just amazing. Just DM me and I can send you the details. It's also, you can Google it. It's also on the internet and on LinkedIn, but would be great to have.
Is this the link here? Hold on, let me see. I don't know.
That is the payment link. Oh, I love it. Go straight to
pay her right away.
Visa, MasterCard, Amex, folks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Leslie, and we'll follow up with the recording and all this stuff after. And really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.